From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
Good morning. By dawn's early light in Panama, U.S. soldiers supported by tanks and aircraft are on the attack. The main target, apparently, the Panamanian Defense Barracks, normally Manuel Noriega's headquarters. The action is not over. Casualties are reported heavy. We do not yet have any official count.
I was a kid. My brother was literally the person that in 1977 had gotten in trouble in St. Augustine, and he stood before a judge, and the judge said jail or military. And he chose the hardest branch. He chose the Marine Corps. That's what he thought was the hardest branch. Meritorious, promoted in basic, went to airborne school, ranger school, did all this high-speed stuff. And me and all my friends, we were all fascinated with his stories and all the stuff. He'd come home on leave and we would get training. So when I joined the Army, I went straight to the 82nd Airborne. I ended up in a line infantry airborne platoon. When I was serving in that platoon my first year at Fort Bragg, I saw guys out in the field on motorcycles, and I saw them doing all kind of high-speed stuff. And I was like, hey, who are those guys? I want to be with those guys. So eventually they had tryouts, and I passed up on going on leave, or I passed up on a 4-day weekend with all my buddies that were going up to Philadelphia to see our girlfriends and stuff. And instead, I stayed back at Fort Bragg, and I did the tryouts. So I completed tryouts to get into the reconnaissance platoon. I made it in. It took a while after interviews, and then I got into the platoon. But from there on, it was small unit tactics, get ready for Panama. Then we knew we were about to go to Panama for jungle warfare school. Before we attended school, we all had to sign our last will. We all had to get shots. We had to get all kind of stuff that you only get when you go into a war zone. So from the moment I parachuted into Panama, and I parachuted in, I think it was around December 10th, but it was about 1 in the morning. I landed in Gatun Lake and missed Gatun DZ. But from the very moment we got there, we began jungle warfare school.
Fort Sherman is an ideal location for jungle combat training. The maneuver area consists of approximately 23,000 acres of primary jungle.
When I went to jungle warfare school down in Panama, I got trained by some really, really good older veterans. So we happened to be going through, our 24-man recon platoon was going through with a SEAL platoon. So all the SEALs, they were all older than us. They had, they were SEALs. We were conducting Jungle Operation Training Center, Jungle Warfare School during the day, and then at night we would go out and do missions at various prisons, because there was a guy named Kurt Muse that was being interrogated and beat down by the Noriega administration, basically. But this guy, we were looking for him one night at a prison in a town called Balboa. We were going down the Panama Canal with some Navy SEALs, and as we were pulling into this area to dock, it was so dark you couldn't see the dock. So the boat that we were on slammed into this dock. Some people went in the water, but ultimately we ran up to this prison, and when we got up there, we were compromised by these people. So a big standoff ensued, and we all sat there silent with our weapons on fire and just literally just waiting for one person to shoot, because that was our rules of engagement. But no one did. And ultimately, in the middle of that standoff, a CH-47 helicopter landed in the prison softball field, and it was almost as if we had rehearsed it, but not one person rehearsed it. It was just a quick moment A SEAL said, let's go. And next thing you know, each one of us, one at a time, got up, took off running, jumped over a fence like we were some kind of athletes or something, but jumped over a fence. And as we ran into the back of the CH-47, flipped our weapons upside down, got in, and took off. We did a debrief that night, and then the next day we went right back to training. And then ultimately it was about the next night. It was the night of December 19th, and our commander woke us up, and he goes, Recon, listen up. Tomorrow you will be the law and order of Panama.
Last night I ordered U.S. military forces to Panama. No president takes such action lightly. Last Friday, Noriega declared his military dictatorship to be in a state of war with the United States. As president, I have no higher obligation than to safeguard the lives of American citizens. And that is why I directed our armed forces to protect the lives of American citizens in Panama and to bring General Noriega to justice in the United States.
As we were loading into a deuce and a half in the back of the vehicle at 1 o'clock in the morning, I noticed an older guy with a combat patch, and he was the only guy around us that had a combat patch. And I looked at him, and he was a Grenada vet, and it was weird because I was still a teenager, and when I looked at him and I looked at that patch, it gave me comfort knowing that there was at least a combat veteran amongst us. My recon team I was assigned to, we jumped in the back of a deuce and a half with a whole bunch of grunts, and we were surrounded by them and sandbags, and they drove us to a point and drive through checkpoints that people were shooting at us.
Biggest fight on the hill in the early days, got the till deep inside. Sounding gun on the run through the endless gray. On the fight for the right, yet lose the same. For a hill men would kill, why they do not know. Sniffing wounds down the pride.
Let's start up on the Atlantic Caribbean side with Task Force Atlantic. Task Force Atlantic consisted of a battalion from the 7th Infantry Division and a battalion from the 82nd Airborne Division, which was in the Jungle Operations Training Center in Panama. The electrical distribution station at Cerro Tigre is now secure, and Madden Dam, a critical facility, is also secure.
So in Panama, the unit I was assigned to, it was Delta Company, and Delta Company was holding Madden Dam, and that was a high-value target. So their mission was to keep that running, to keep power going, and our mission, I was hiding 5 kilometers from there, and my mission was to let them know every vehicle that was coming their way, and any bad guys that were in the area, any people that might be forming up to make an attack. And for instance, on Christmas Day, a vehicle came up. A lot of the Panamanian Defense Forces had gotten smart. They had gotten rid of the uniforms and put civilian clothing on. And at the checkpoint, they said, get out of the vehicle, and no one would get out of the vehicle. So they start pulling these guys out of the vehicle. All of a sudden, a door came ajar and a hand grenade rolled out, and it blew up a bunch of guys on one side of the vehicle. This one first sergeant ended up shooting this guy. We shot him with a M16, but he shot him numerous times, and a lieutenant witnessed it and said that was excessive, and the guy ultimately was court-martialed for that shooting at Madden Dam. But he was ultimately found not guilty and promoted to sergeant major as soon as he walked out of the court-martial.
The location we're in right now is the area around the Vatican Embassy. We've been here since Christmas Eve when Noriega sought asylum inside the embassy.
it was just interesting because you never knew who the threat was. You didn't know, because a lot of the Panamanian Defense Forces, they got in civilian clothes, and you didn't know who was who. And it's kind of fascinating because I'm listening to Band of Brothers right now, and they're talking about after the collapse of the German army, a lot of them jumped into different uniforms or civilian clothes and tried to blend in. And you had high-value people that they were looking for. But that's how Panama, I guess, in some ways, it was like that, or similar to that. Once our mission was over of pulling surveillance for Madden Dam, once all of our unit's mission was done, they rounded us up, sent us back to Fort Sherman, and the Army gets away with, say, not paying for fuel by parachuting a whole division back into Fort Bragg. So they ended up getting all of us back around, it was, I think, like January 4th or 5th or something, but we all parachuted back into Fort Bragg, and all of us had sunburnt faces, and we were all sitting there shaking during this ceremony. And some general got up there and he goes, "I know it's cold, and I'll keep this short." And then he started with a freaking West Point story, and we were like, "Oh God, that's going to be a long one." Ultimately, in 1991, I was discharged from the Army and basically just sent on with my life.
And in terms of the firefighting capabilities, when you get up to this high level, I assume the firefighters have got to get up there and, fight it from inside. If you're
on the day before 9/11, I was at a skateboard park in Phoenix skateboarding, and the next day was 9/11, and the very next day it was 9/12, and I ended up going to an Army recruiter's office and wanted to join back. So my buddy from the Panama invasion, my buddy Kevin Small, he and I ended up joining the Rhode Island Army National Guard. There was a LURS detachment there, a long-range surveillance detachment unit, and because we were airborne, because we were recon, we were able to join this unit and then get ready for Operation Iraqi Freedom or Operation Enduring Freedom. We thought we were going to Afghanistan, but then we ended up in Iraq. But we did Operation Iraqi Freedom 3. Before I went to Iraq, I studied with a imam at a mosque in Phoenix because I wanted to understand Islam better. So when I went to Iraq, whenever we were surrounded by Sunnis or Shias, I knew that at the time, Shias liked us more than the Sunnis did. So, certain areas we would get attacked more predominantly, and it was Sunni areas where they had life better before we got there. But for me and the guys that I know, it was our first time experiencing the desert, and it's just such a unique environment because it goes from raging cold, incredibly hot, the dust is unbelievable. When it rains, everything turns to mud that sticks to everything, every inch of your vehicle, your boots, everything. So it's just such a horrible environment. I was a guy in my team that would always let the guys know what the temperature was because I enjoyed doing that. When it got really hot, I was like, hey, it's 113. So, and then at night, if it got down to 70, you were freezing. And it was, but yeah, we were in southern Iraq at one point, and then we were as far as Beiji in kind of northern Iraq. But yeah, man, the desert is no joke at night. So, January of 2005, we had boots on ground in Kuwait, and then we were told we have to drive up through Baghdad. So literally from Kuwait up through Baghdad, we drove, and I was up in the turret behind a 240 machine gun, and that was my job. When we were mobile, I was a machine gunner, and when we were dismounted, I was the radio guy, and we all were medics. So in 2006, I ended up joining the Florida Army National Guard. I was sent to Total Army Instructor Training School, then Small Group Instructor Training School, and then I became an instructor with the 211th Regional Training Institute. And it was the first, they had just built this schoolhouse. So the instructors from Fort Benning had to come and teach us so we could teach to the same standard as the Fort Benning guys. From 2006 to 2010, I got to train with some really good people from Fort Benning. I got to teach some great students that were going to either Afghanistan or Iraq. And whenever I had students going to Afghanistan, I would always put a list of books on the board of, hey, read about Soviet history in Afghanistan, read the book, The Bear Went Over the Mountain, read, certain educational things, be as prepared as you can. And that was something I always tried to preach to the guys, like, learn about the culture and the environment about where you're going. And it's amazing what students learn through lessons, like of stories of how things can go wrong quickly. Like one night we happened to park next to an IED, cleared the whole area with our nods, and it didn't find anything. And then the next morning, another unit pulled up to us, and as soon as the most people were in the kill radius, someone detonated the bomb. But you just, in the desert, you're always being watched, and there's always someone that wants to know what you're doing, and it's almost always for malicious purposes. It's not because they want to bring you flowers. It's because they don't want you in their country. So I, at one point, after getting blown up in Iraq, I ended up going to Portsmouth Naval Hospital in Portsmouth, Virginia, and I ended up having my spine worked on. But after that surgery, I had issues with my left arm. I don't know, just so December 4th, 2013, the Army said, hey, thanks for your service, but you're now medically retired. So I chalked that up to a big old victory and graduated from Flagler College with a bachelor's degree 10 days later and had a bachelor's in public administration.
Go! 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 Go!
Well, shortly after retiring from the Army, I went to Wounded Warrior Project and I became a peer mentor for them. And through that, I had met a couple people that were like, hey, what do you do? How do you find an outlet? Like, what do you want to do? And I miss jumping out of planes. I miss all that. So I had worked with Bill Markham in the Florida Army National Guard, and I had known Bill. I had known he was a squared away soldier, knew that he was a no-nonsense leader. And in 2016, I think it was about 2016, Bill reached out to me and he goes, hey, why don't you come out and see what we're doing? And when I finally came out here, I was just blown away at there were people jumping rounds, that people were having fun, that it was healthy. It was an awesome outlet that we had out here to just let loose, recreate some fun times, not have a lot of the dumb shit the big Army kind of does.
Place where Jeannie Blaylock is talking to the guys who will be jumping from the sky, just like they did on D-Day. Jeannie, to you.
Oh, you're right, Lou. Tomorrow is a celebratory day, and that's because it's Jump Day. We're in St. Mariglis, where the American paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne and the 101st came here and drew away the German fire, fought with them, got rid of the Germans so the guys who landed on the beach could move on through and head in toward Paris and free France. That's how important this town is.
This time, the hope is Mr. Rice will enjoy the jump, and so will Art Schaefer.
Oh, that's going to be so cool with a 97-year-old actual veteran.
That's it.
Strapped to you.
That's it.
Oh, that's so cool.
One day I was talking to Jeannie Blaylock. Okay, so Jeannie Blaylock and we became friends, and every once in a while when she had heard of a service member that was in the Florida area that was suicidal, she would pair me up with them to try to mentor that person if I could even connect with them. So through one of my buddies that I'm now friends with, she paired me up with him, and now his life is much better. He's got a great job. He does cyber security, like great job. But Jeannie, one day, I told her, I said, guess what? I said, I'm going to France for the 75th anniversary of Normandy. And she goes, oh, that would be amazing, you know? So she goes, I wish I could go. I said, why don't you go? You know, will you talk to my board of directors and see if, you know? And I said, what am I going to say? So while I was working in my yard, I was in shorts, no shirt, flip-flops. I'm working in my yard. I get a call from Jeannie Blaylock, and this was probably 2017 or 2018. And she said, hey, Kevin, it's Jeannie Blaylock. I'm with Channel 12 News, and I've got my board here, and they want to know why I should go with you and your team to France. And the only thing I said was, do you all want to watch history, or do you want to be a part of history in the making? And the whoever was in charge, the one gentleman, he said, okay, thank you, that'll be all. And that was it. So I went back to working in my yard, and it was probably an hour later, Jeannie called me, and she goes, hey, we're coming. So we're coming to France. And, you know, Jeannie went on to do, like, some Emmy nominated, and, you know, I think she received some Emmys out of her work for it. And her whole World War II D-Day production, it became an educational format in high schools, How I Met You. But I don't know. I've always volunteered, so when it came to volunteering to go to your school that day, I think it's important to work with students that want to listen. So when I met you and I met your classmates, I was fascinated that there were students that were interested, because a lot of students these days ask them what Normandy was or what D-Day is or anything like that. They don't know. Most don't know, nor do they care. That's the reality, is that it's not taught in school that much anymore, so it's just it's kind of a thing of the past.
It's very passive, how they teach you.
Yeah. Your teacher and his passion, it really surprised me of just the level of enthusiasm and the students that had serious questions, the students that I was able to watch them go each year. And then I noticed one student that got her college acceptance letter. I noticed, you know, the students were getting on with their lives, and it was just really, again, nice to see that, because, you know, it's only a small percentage of high school students that are interested in any of that, you know, so it's very, very good to see, you know. I have had so many good jumps between air shows, parachuting out here, parachuting into Michigan, turning 50 on June 9th, 2019, and jumping into St. Mary Glees for the 75th anniversary of Normandy. That was like the greatest experience. But turning 50, doing that, and having about 100 of my buddies with me in 37 C-47s, that was an incredible experience, you know. Think how many years ago that was. That was years ago. Since then, you jumped out of a plane, you were injured, you've recovered. Like, I mean, it's pretty amazing, just with the will to jump out of a plane. Even if you did get hurt, it's still, you had the tenacity to do it. And to me, it's just something that, just like when I see Dave DeSoucy, he's walking around here, he's 77 years old. He was an extra in Red Dawn. You know, like that's awesome. But whenever I hear my friends that are my age talk about they're too old to jump, you're not too old.
Thank you very much for the interview.
Brother, it is my pleasure. and I'm telling you, man, just to see